Ready to swim in cash like Scrooge McDuck? It's time for the top 10 economy games on PC. Money. It never sleeps. It makes the world go round. It, must be funny. Okay, that last one doesn't quite work. Thanks, ABBA. But suffice to say, we're all familiar with cash's place at the beating heart of society. It's also at the centre of a good many video games too, often accumulated and then exchanged for better gear and abilities, with not a VAT receipt in sight. But in this video, we're auditing the games that really put amassing gross piles of wealth at centre stage. The economy sims and management games where your primary task is to look at the bottom line, and where all other activities like providing oxygen to Martian colonists, making video games or movies, or manufacturing life-saving drugs are all really just byproducts of your hunt for filthy, filthy lucre. Gordon Gekko power suits at the ready, we're going into the best economy sims on PC. What would life be like on Mars? Science fiction has pondered this question for decades, and it's brought us fantastic visions of that possible future, like sophisticated colonies and Matt Damon using poop for fertiliser. We suspect the closest guess when it comes to what would happen in real life, though, is Offworld Trading Company. In Mohawk Games' lightning-paced strategy management hybrid, you're providing resources to nearby human colonies on the Red Planet. But here's the kicker, so are a bunch of ultra-aggressive corporations. That leads to an almost RTS-like rush for resources and an emphasis on actions per minute to make a StarCraft player crack a smile. Market values change in real time depending on what you buy or sell, which is A, excellent, and B, ripe for strategic manipulation. Rubs hands. We've all had that power fantasy where we're running a top game studio. Usually after a real-life top game studio didn't make their latest game to our exact, impossible-to-know specifications. And in those moments of hubris, Game Dev Tycoon steps in and invites you to try and do better. Starting off in a basement during the 80s video game boom, it simulates the next 30 years of industry evolution, including console releases and consumer trends. And it casts you as the next Carmack, Molyneux, or, well, whoever else you aspire to be, steadily expanding a team around you, training them up, buying an G3 conference booth to hype your next game up, and chasing ever higher review scores. Gosh, there's always one, isn't there? Did you know that if you add up all the numbers in any Anno game, you get 9? No? Next you'll be telling us that you don't know the finer points of late medieval economics either, but don't worry about that. Anno 1404 will be your guide. This is resource gathering and city building with a kinder, friendlier air, and it's full of voiced characters and self-contained story scenarios. From a quaint little peasant village, you build newfangled improvements like logging camps and dirt roads, until before you know it, you're presiding over a deliciously profitable city. Ultimately, your goal is still to rake in the coin for your king, but all this subterfuge and pantomime villainy, seriously, what is going on with this man's hair, add a rare narrative depth to the experience. The years immediately pre- and post-millennium were a bit of a golden age for strategy and management PC games. And when it comes to business sims, 2001's Capitalism II is basically the dawn. You have to excuse its gaudy visuals and clunky menus when you play it today, but it's worth brushing aside the cobwebs because, blimey, it's deep. From humble beginnings, that's selling discount chicken out of a convenience store on the edge of town in our case, you build a glittering financial empire by identifying consumer demands, muscling in on competitors to establish market dominance, and investing your profits on, well, stuff that will bring in more profits. Unlike some other options in this video, there's no layer of ironic humour in Capitalism II, which gives an almost sinister air to proceedings as you try to ruin competitors and price gouge your customers. Don't tell Karl Marx we said this, but damn, it's fun. Time for another game which, like Game Dev Tycoon, professes to be about making art, but is really about making great big piles of currency. Lionhead always did things a bit differently, and there's no clearer indication of that than the fact that in their take on the classic Tycoon game, you get to actually make films. Like, really make them. Choose the sets, the actors, the scenes, the works. Oh, and it simulates the entire history of cinema too, from the silent film years through the studio era and up to present day. Well, 2005. It may not have the most detailed accounting books on this list, but what better way to make your fortune than by releasing silent movies of weightlifting women? Take that, early 20th century gender roles. Big Pharma is about turning illness into profit by making conveyor belts full of scientific doohickeys which make drugs. It's a more pleasant experience than it sounds. It all begins when your researchers discover ingredients which might help various ailments. So you build a production line that brings out those positive attributes, minimising the side effects as much as you can while still turning a profit, then release your new drug and watch the market adjust accordingly. Oh, and you can retile your factory floors, so it's not all profiteering on people's health problems. Sophisticated and full of knowing cynicism, Big Pharma's as close as we ever want to get to being Martin Shkreli. Another one from that millennial golden age, Industry Giant 2 simulates just about every way there is to turn a profit. Like Capitalism II, it often begins with shilling eggs out of a rickety old store. But unlike its contemporary, Industry Giant 2 takes you through a historical journey, inviting you to expand your empire as technological breakthroughs change the markets. You can even get involved with transport networks to ship goods across your empire, if, unlike us, you can figure out how to lay train tracks. There are more graphs and charts than you could ever possibly hope to understand, but even a decade and a half later, it's an incredibly impressive business sim with real depth and real satisfaction to be had from making sense of it all. We've covered economy sims, both old and new, in this video so far, and now it's time for one which manages to be both. Legendary developer Chris Sawyer first released Transport Tycoon in 1994, and it's notable for two things. One, having a box that you'd happily have framed above your fireplace, just look at it, and two, somehow making civil engineering a truly enjoyable experience. But our journey doesn't end there. Sawyer and his fans have been keeping the game alive ever since, starting with a deluxe version in 1995 from the man himself, and then a fan-made open source release in 2013, which is still regularly updated to this day, with a sack full of little additions and improvements that make it better than ever. Play it for 5 minutes and you know exactly why the community went to all the trouble. It's Roller Coaster Tycoon with grown-up modes of transport. Sold. Do you remember Startopia? Great! Let's be friends forever. For everyone else's sake, here are the broad strokes. You play a space station administrator trying to make the most attractive interplanetary tourist destination, and thus the most profitable, while a bunch of rivals try the same. It's a roughly similar concept to Offworld Trading Company, which we mentioned right at the start of the video, but played at a more relaxed pace and with a focus on pandering to the very different desires of its alien races, who in a hilariously dated design call are called peeps. These two-headed turrican prefer intellectual pursuits, you see, while this Dahanese siren is after more hedonistic entertainment. Developer Mucky was founded by former Bullfrog employees, and you can see their trademark wit and innovation all over Startopia. Okay, we're going off the beaten track for our last entry and venturing all the way back to 1990 to play Stock Market the Game. Yes, it looks like a teletext page and the soundtrack leaves something to be desired, but this is pure money-making simulation from the Gordon Gekko era. And we do mean pure. In 1990, there was no easing you in with tutorial levels, no upgrade trees, and no barrage of submenus. Stock Market the Game is as simple as buying stocks, waiting for a day to pass, and seeing how they performed. If you think you're safe buying Coca-Cola stock because, hey, what are they going to do, go bankrupt? Well, you're not, and they might. We learned that the hard way during the Great Crash of 1990. Thankfully, you can take out stupendously risky loans when cash flow becomes a problem. And boy, when those risks pay off, we're off to buy a yacht now. Catch you later. And that's that. The markets have closed for the night and we're off to unwind by looking at our projected FY20 profits and putting our thumbs under our red braces like the fat cats we are. Well, in these games. Leave us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button for more like this one, and remember to turn on notifications to make sure you know when our next video lands.